what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a supernatural horror film, The House. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in a typical wooden house. It carries a bloody history marred with violence and death. Inside, the brutal memories are still echoing within the walls where 3 women died. Screams of anguish reverberate as the women's souls are doomed to relive their suffering over and over again. As morning dawns over a busy city in Thailand, reporter Chalani is just winding down from a tiring night. She had just finished her segment on child prostitution, and she submitted her recording to her boss. The boss offers her a new assignment, this time about child drug abuse. Chalani grimaces, saying that she is tired of these kinds of stories and she wants something new. On her way out of the building to meet with her boyfriend, she meets her fellow reporter. He wants her to work with him on revisiting a string of cold cases. Intrigued, Chalani cancels her plans with her boyfriend and talks more with her colleague. He tells her that he's working on a documentary about a famous murder case 6 years ago involving a professor killing his wife. Interestingly, there are 2 other similar murder cases. Chalani browses through newspaper archives about the professor's murder trial. The wife's body was never found, but the police did find some tissue from an internal organ that was cut by a surgeon's scalpel. The professor is currently on death row, awaiting his execution. Chalani's boyfriend has connections, and he manages to score an interview through the professor's lawyer. She visits the professor in prison. When he emerges from his cell and sees her, he smirks and then turns right back around. Stunned by the professor's rejection, Chalani tries to interview his former colleagues. However, she doesn't have much luck, since they all refuse to talk to her. That is, except for a young girl who tells her the professor's house is haunted. Chalani tracks down the professor's address. It's the same house shown at the beginning of the film, but when she gets to the front steps, a man turns her away, saying that she doesn't have permission to visit the house. Before she leaves, Chalani glimpses a woman staring out of one of the upper windows. She gets the woman on tape. She goes back to her office and reviews the tape. It unmistakably proves that what she saw really was a woman. When Chalani shuts off the TV, it comes back to life a few minutes later. She turns it off again and prints a picture of the house. Chalani steps out into the hallway. The building is deserted, and she starts to feel wary of the strange noises she's hearing. She could almost feel a woman walking barefoot beside her in a puddle of blood. A strong gust of wind comes, and Chalani accidentally drops what she's holding. She bends to pick the papers up, and when she looks up, she is now inside the creepy house. A pool of blood rushes in, and she hears a woman fearfully whispering to her not to come inside the house. Chalani whirls around, and suddenly she is back in the hallway again. She thinks about another interview with a neighbor, who says that when the professor and his wife moved in, they were a loving couple. They never fought until well after they'd moved in. Combined with the girl's story that the house is haunted, Chalani formulates a theory that the house had something to do with the murder. Chalani decides to go back to the house with her video camera. In the corner, she catches a woman staring at her. She walks closer, but the woman has already disappeared. One of the bedroom doors creaks open. When Chalani peers inside, she sees a different man hacking a woman into pieces. Above him, a demonic creature is hovering and whispering into his ears. Chalani faints, and the last thing she sees before she closes her eyes is a woman standing in the corner. Right then, her boyfriend ventures inside to look for her, and he finds Chalani unconscious on the floor. He immediately comes to her aid. Behind the boyfriend, a tall and eerily thin figure steps out of the shadows. The boyfriend's eyes widen as he sees the creature. Flash forward to hours later when they get back to the city. He appears to be fine, and Chalani asks to be dropped off at the office. When she leaves, the demon from the house is behind the boyfriend. Meanwhile, Chalani can't shake the man's face from her head. She searches through the archives again and finds Mr. Chalarm. Just as she suspected, Chalarm was accused of murdering his girlfriend too. When the boyfriend gets home to the apartment they share, his mood turns sour when he smells that Chalani has been smoking again. The house is located at the back of a renowned hospital and has functioned as a residence for many of the employees who worked there through the years. Chalani obtains the residence records and finds that Chalarm lived there with his girlfriend when he was a medical student at the hospital. In 1992, the skull of the girlfriend was found in a river. Chalarm was accused of murdering her. An interview with his co-worker details a similar story of how Chalarm used to be a kind man, but his behavior changed after moving into the creepy house. A blackout occurs in the office building, while Chalani and her colleague are talking to each other. Alone at their apartment, Chalani's boyfriend is starting to get paranoid. He imagines that Chalani is cheating on him with her colleague. Behind the boyfriend, the demon is fueling his paranoid delusions. The boyfriend then wakes up in bed, and Chalani is sleeping beside him. He immediately tells her that he wants her to quit his job and just stay at home. But Chalani has never wanted to be the typical housewife, and she is passionate about her career. Before, her boyfriend has always accepted who she is and has never pressured her to conform to societal expectations for women. Chalani disregards his request, and the boyfriend turns violent, grabbing the back of her neck with force. The next day, Chalani visits Challard in prison. Initially, he gives Clip one-word answers to her question, so she decides to switch tactics and asks him about the house. This gets Chalam's attention. He asks her why she's interested in the house. She mentions that the house is located behind the hospital and has been a residence for medical students and employees for decades. Chalam asks her if she has visited the house with her boyfriend. He gets oddly excited by this idea, and he cackles maniacally. He tells her that she has made him extremely happy. Chalam leans in close and reveals to her that someone in the house forced him to kill his girlfriend. While walking through the prison, Chalani hears someone calling for her from the basement. She follows the sound and goes downstairs. There she finds a dark hallway with a door at the end of it. In the corner, a woman is writing the word death on the wall with blood. Chalani recoils in fear and runs deeper into the basement, where she finds the words "Beware" and "Don't come in" written on the walls too. She runs screaming and is eventually rescued by an irate prison guard. Chalani interviews more people living near the house. She finds out that people would see the ghost of the nurse wandering the streets at night. That night, while driving home on a bridge, Chalani has a vision of Chalam dumping his girlfriend's body on the river. She stops the car and steps out to look closer at the swirling water below. In the distance, several wolves are howling. Chalani hurries back to her car and sees a different woman emerging from the river. She slowly creeps toward Chalani, who closes her eyes in fear. The next thing she knows, she hears several cars honking behind her. This vision leads Chalani to research the third and earliest murder. It occurred 4 decades ago and involved a doctor murdering his nurse wife and throwing her body in the river. Later, Chalani heads to a museum to learn more about the nurse's case. Suddenly, the lights go dark, and she sees the nurse's reflection on the glass case. Chalani screams in terror. Meanwhile, Chalam calls Chalani's boyfriend, under the pretense that he wants to hire him as his lawyer. When the boyfriend meets with him, he proclaims his innocence. He commands the boyfriend to go to the house and find the exonerating evidence that is hidden inside a wooden column there. The boyfriend does as he is told and returns to the house. He finds the wooden column. But before he can do anything, a creature yanks him to the floor. He sees 3 dark figures standing over him, and he screams out loud. Chalani wakes up in the hospital. She exits her room and walks among the nurses and hospital staff milling about. Nobody notices her. It turns out to be the same hospital where the murderers had worked. She sees a familiar man she recognizes as the doctor who had killed his nurse wife. It appears that Chalani is inside a memory once again, specifically the night her body was found and the doctor was arrested. She even overhears the hospital staff telling the doctor that his wife had been raped. She sees the nurse's body lying on a slab covered with a cloth. Suddenly, the nurse is in front of her, telling her to be careful. Chalani runs out of the room and discovers that she is now inside the house once again. The professor's wife is kneeling in front of the wooden column. Her head turns all the way without her body moving. Chalani runs to another room and sees a dark figure dragging Chalam's girlfriend's ghost across the floor. The girlfriend grabs her feet, but is eventually swallowed by the darkness. The nurse returns and tells Chalani to be careful again. Finally, Chalani wakes up in the real hospital. Sean is there, and he drives her home. Before he leaves, she thanks him for helping her. Her boyfriend is already waiting for her in their apartment. However, he's acting strangely. He tells her that he is busy and closes the bedroom door on his face. The truth is, he is busy researching the 3 previous murder cases. His mind is racing with the thoughts planted by the demonic creatures, thoughts that whisper Chalani is cheating on her. Chalani delves deeper into her research. She finds out that in the years between the murders, other people briefly stayed at the house. However, they moved out after being haunted by a woman wearing a blue blouse, the same woman Chalani saw in the window, and the ghost the neighbors were talking about. She then comes to the realization that the nurse, who was the first victim, must be a vengeful spirit trapped in the house, who inflicted her pain on the others and caused the next 2 murders. Chalani also watches the take she recorded on the day that she first went inside the house. After she faints, the camera is still rolling when her boyfriend rushes to her rescue. Chalani watches as a dark figure comes up behind him and then enters his body. Now knowing that her boyfriend is possessed by an evil spirit, Chalani warily approaches him. But he seems to be in good spirits and even cooks food for her. However, he forces her to eat with him. She doesn't notice an empty medicine bottle inside the trash bin. Chalani reluctantly takes her first bite and then asks the boyfriend to get her some water. When she thinks that he is out of sight, she spits out the bitter-tasting food, but the boyfriend does see her and he gets angry. He slaps Chalani and chases her with a knife. All the while, the 3 demonic creatures are behind him, whispering that he should kill her for betraying him. Then he suddenly sees the necklace he gave her, and he remembers the love they have for each other. For a moment, the spell breaks, and he is back to normal once again. But this moment ends, and the boyfriend pulls out a gun. Chelini grabs the knife and plunges the blade into the boyfriend's chest. He dies in her arms. Then the pieces fall into place. The medicine bottle and the gun disappear, and it appears that Chelini had murdered her boyfriend in cold blood. She realizes that she has been manipulated into killing him, just like Chalarm and the professor were manipulated into killing their loved ones. Desperate, she contacts the nurse's spirit and asks her why she would hurt other people. The nurse denies this allegation and tells Chelini that she has been the one warning her not to come inside the house this whole time. She then starts sharing her horrible experience. The nurse had been raped by 3 men inside the house, but her doctor husband did nothing to stop them. After they were done with her, the men stabbed her multiple times. The doctor dumped her still-breathing body in the river. Chelini decides to end the house once and for all. She returns bearing a container of gasoline she's going to use to burn it down, but the house protects itself and cannot be burned. One of the women's spirits pointed her to the wooden column in the middle of the house. When she gets near it, she sees a vision of hell, alluding that the house's horrors stem from a demonic origin. The 3 demonic spirits chase Chelini, and she makes it to the cellar where the base of the wooden column is. She struggles to set the column on fire as a mob of evil spirits tries to stop her. In the end, Chelini succeeds, and the house goes up in flames, presumably killing her too. A recording of Chelini plays. In it, she explains that the house's long history of being a site of war, violence, and hatred had turned it into a gateway to hell. It preys on the vulnerabilities of people and manipulates them into thinking the worst of their loved ones. The movie ends with Chelini's research on the 3 murder cases not being aired at all. Elsewhere, the house has been renovated after the fire and is looking as pristine as the first day Chelini saw it. In the upper window, a figure could be seen there, waiting for its next victim. This is Daniel's CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.